Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us tonight's edition of HR Leadership Learning Series. My name is Oluwayemi Adeosun. I'm excited and happy to let you know that I'm the facilitator for tonight, of course, as the flyer already communicates. I'll be looking at the topic, navigating the new world of work. Okay, rethinking talent strategies. Navigate the world of work, the thinking strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, just in case somebody just gets in contact with this channel or with me for the first time, just a little about me. I've worked in about 12, 13 organizations in 12, 13 industries, moved around, used to what we call change, both organizational initiated change and professional, personal initiated change. And I know what it means to work in different contexts, different organizations, different environments. And I'm leading this conversation tonight. At some point, we'll be free to contribute, chime in, share our own experiences, add value to the conversation. As much as possible, also to questions in this basis. Of course, if you reach and so that can all right. Look at the first week. These are some of the things we'll cover in my workplace realities, navigating workplace disruptions, embracing diversity and inclusion, understanding the multi-generational workforce, so just give me a minute. Let me see if I can change my network, if that will be better. Okay, I've done that successfully. Okay, so let me go back to recording. Oh, I see why now. Somebody was calling my other line. Okay. Okay. All right. Again, this is what we'll be looking at. This is what we'll be looking at today. Imagine workplace realities, navigating workplace disruptions, embracing diversity and inclusion, understanding the multi-generational workforce, future-proofing HR strategies, and of course, we'll take questions, discussions, and contribution. Moving straight ahead, let's look at a few interesting statistics and data. All right, by 2030, ladies and gentlemen, the AI market is expected to reach 1 trillion. And 2020 is just 5 years away from us, or 4 technically. Investment in data analytics is also expected to rise by over 30% over the next decade. So increasingly, more than ever before, data analytics will be on the front burner. All right. By the end of this year, autonomous AI systems, AI, of course, means artificial intelligence, okay, like Microsoft Copilot, Google Notebook, are anticipated to significantly improve workplace productivity. Again, some of the recent key global statistics show that 75% of young people value proximities to amenities like gyms, bars, restaurants when choosing an office location, especially for physical office locations. Mention of AI in job interviews increased by 35% just last year, 2024. Discussions about diversity, equity, and inclusion in job interviews decreased by 40% in 2024. Of course, I guess we can guess one of the reasons why from a global perspective, because the president of the United States technically and practically started de-emphasizing DEI even from a national perspective from US. And you know how sometimes when major countries or major influencers globally, when they emphasize or de-emphasize something, how multinationals and other organizations tend to take a cue and follow suit. Okay, so funding from United States government has been de-emphasized, reduced significantly since last year. Only about 18% of employees feel their organizational values are aligned with the current culture. Organizational values means, of course, the values that is on the website, in our newsletter, okay, on the walls, on our screen, desktop screen, and so on and so forth. Current culture means the real reality, what is happening in the office on the field. 25% of employees report that leaders' behavior does not reflect or portray the values. In other words, in organizations today, sadly, a lot of employees, about 25% of them say, claim, allege that the leaders in their businesses, in their firms, in their workplaces, do not actually live out or reflect the culture, the core values of the organization. You can see a disconnect. And then 1 in 6 apprenticeship programs globally is now taken by university graduates. So these are some general statistics, and you will see the import of some of these statistics as this conversation unfolds. So we need to understand the new world of work. I know for a long time we've been hearing new world of work, new normal, which is now normal, but that still doesn't mean we should not interrogate it, that we should not try and understand and appreciate it. Because you may need to tweak 1 or 2 things, and that 1 or 2 things you need to tweak will lead to significant improvements with respect to how you manage talent, either as an HR practitioner or as a business leader. 1, you must come to the realization and reality and embrace the fact that disruption is now normal. As in, disruption is now normal. Of course, post-pandemic 2020 was almost like a new base year because it redefined a lot of things with respect to digitalization, transformation, hybrid workplace model, AI operations, generally shifted traditional employment paradigms. Of course, we can see that from 2024, that's last year to this year, you've seen an increasing agitation from certain entrepreneurs and business owners on the need in many places to even go back to physical work. Okay? The expectations keep evolving. Professionals, in other words, employees, people who provide their services to employers, increasingly now value flexibility, now value purpose-driven work and continuous learning as much as they value salary. So nobody is saying people don't want salary. We all do. It doesn't matter which country you live in. You need the naira, the dollar, the pounds, and so on and so forth, the yen to survive. But we are saying, of course, life is short. And we spend much of our life at work or in work-related projects. It's okay to find meaning and purpose, even as we do this. And then global competition, especially for talents. Just today, I went to teach at a MBA program for a major school here today. And one of their staff, one of the executive students was telling me how he works 2 jobs, both jobs international jobs and is doing them remotely. They are in two slightly different parts of the world. And so the time overlap makes it even convenient and easy for him to attend to the requirements of the job. So he's not looking for a job in Nigeria. Even though he's in Nigeria, it's not available to Nigerian opportunities or firms. Of course, internet digitalization has now made it possible for global firms to hire employees from almost any country as long as there's minimum reasonable competition and infrastructure to support this. So disruption is the new norm. Employee expectation is evolving, and there's increasing opportunities for local Nigerian talents to render their service either as full-time employees or through contracts or freelancing through different platforms. So it's very, very what's important. Now, for a long time, we've been discussing VUCA, which is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. But with each year, each month, each new day, the VUCA is even becoming more complicated, if you can permit my use of this expression, because the speed and rate and rapidity of change is faster than ever before. Almost every day, something happens to even make things more unclear. Okay? Complex. So many options, so many parameters, so many factors, and sometimes insufficient resources. And ambiguity, which is the lack of clarity about the meaning of events. Sometimes it's not about a right answer or a wrong answer. A government may make a pronouncement in the morning, by afternoon they are making a U-turn. Then governments in different parts of the world taking different positions. Today we hear, tariff has been increased by 20%. A few days or weeks later, you hear, a new agreement or arrangement has been reached. The tariff has now been reduced by 15%. Or it can be war. Two countries throwing missiles to each other, therefore consequently impacting on the value chain. Sometimes it can be movement of international ships, and for organizations that are directly or indirectly affected by global supply chain, there is delay in shipment of their products, services, raw materials, finished goods, as the case may be. However, we are saying that even in this new world of work, as we seek to understand this new world of work, ladies and gentlemen, we must embrace and approach volatility with vision. So, yeah, it's volatile, but we must stay sharp on our vision, because when we focus on our vision, it will help us to improve our situational awareness and our foresight. We'll be able to rigmarole through the volatility and then make some progress. Even as uncertainty from an economic, political, and general point of view is the order of the day, we must approach uncertainty with understanding. Of course, we feel comfortable with being uncomfortable. So we don't bury our face in our hands, hopeless. No. Based on our vision, we have understanding and we are able to navigate. Complexity must be approached with what? With clarity. We are discovering boundaries that we can explore, that we can expand. We are discovering new pathways, new opportunities. Last but not the least, ambiguity must be met and approached with what? Agility. Agility here means flexibility. Being nimble, you must be like the wind. Nobody can catch you. You must be flexible. Yes, your first approach may not work. That's why you have plan B, plan C, and plan D. Now, the business is facing this VUCA environment. HR must help the business respond with vision, with understanding, with clarity, with agility. So which means HR practitioners must appreciate the business, appreciate the dynamic context the business is operating, and then bring HR frameworks, HR methodologies, and HR solutions to help the business overcome these challenging situations. And that's one of the reasons why we're having this conversation. So, what are some of the drivers, ladies and gentlemen? What are some of the drivers of the emerging workplace changes? Of course, it's a combination of factors, ladies and gentlemen. And in no particular order, we'll look at them one after the other. The first general factor affecting workplace changes are demographic factors. So when we talk about demography, we are talking about, for example, age, we are talking about gender, and so on and so forth. So increasingly, we're having aging workforce, people that are close to retirement, approaching retirement, for example. You will see that in many countries, especially in Europe, people are even agitating for, extending the retirement age. Sometimes some of these things, when we say it, sometimes some of us in Nigeria may not be able to relate. So, for example, there are countries in Europe today, because of the low population growth rate, maybe people have one child, two children, some no children. So their youth is almost smaller relative to the older population. So it can cause a distortion. But even in Nigeria, there are certain skill sets that maybe not many young people is drawn towards. And so you will see that as the older generation are retiring or pulling out from the workforce, you now need to retain some of them on contract, because young people, take farming for example. Most young people generally won't like farming. They will rather go and do motorcycle riding, business, transport, rather than go to the farm. So even in agriculture in Nigeria, we are experiencing aging workforce challenge. Then the general issues around diversity and inclusion. Okay, the need, for example, for more women in boardroom. Maybe you are looking at 50-50, 60-40, as the case may be. More representation of certain underrepresented communities and people. It can be a tribe, it can be a region, it can even be an age demography. And then the general generational differences. Baby boomers, millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and how to get all of us, all the generations, to work together in a complementary manner. Next is our technological factors. So things like digital transformation, AI, machine learning, robotics, augmented reality. I know today many of us use ChatGPT, even if it is to compose email or revise our emails, review documents, and so on and so forth. So all of us, directly or indirectly, we are already leveraging on some of these tools and tech. And people who we work with are also using it. Then economic and environmental factors, globalization and trade, okay, sustainability and climate change. I know some of things like climate change may be slightly more pronounced, maybe in the West than in this hemisphere where we are. But increasingly, especially if you operate in a space where you do business that have global dimensions, some of your trade partners will be placing demands and requests on you. And then things like ESG, environment, sustainability, and governance frameworks require that we make certain adjustments. And HR must be at the forefront, at the frontier of this. So I mentioned already, economic uncertainty and volatility. Can see inflation, even here in Nigeria, can see exchange rates, and so on and so forth. Then we have social and cultural factors, okay? Changing workforce expectation. Sometimes we've almost turned it to a joke, especially from the millennials and baby boomers. Any small thing now, you say mental health, and we're almost mimicking or mirroring a generation. And with due respect to all generations, we are different and we are uniquely different. But more than ever before, for example, in the last two years, more people have told me in person that they were resigning without getting another job. 10 years ago, it was very difficult. People can be very unhappy with their job, People may be frustrated with their job, but somehow people tend in the past to have a greater staying power. In other words, they may intensify their job search, they may upskill to be able to get a better job, but they'll tolerate the insults. You get what I mean? I don't want to use foul language. They will tolerate almost anything till they get another job and then move. But now people tend to, first of all, let me first escape for my life, for my sanity, without even thinking of where will the next meal come from. Somehow they realize that they will survive. And in all instances, people have survived. Of course, albeit with different waiting periods. Some have even gotten better job offers because when they were now unemployed, they had more time to search. Some, while they were now unemployed, really had the time to introspect and reflect to say which career paths do I want, which kind of organizations do I want. Some have even gotten international jobs working remote. So, social and cultural factors. Our threshold for pay has changed. Even generally, all of us. Our tolerance for example, disrespect. You hear people say things like, oh, I'm a professional. If you won't treat me like a professional, I'm out. Social justice and activism. You see people now resigning on behalf of another person, insisting that let's do right, let's do the proper thing. Then, last but not the least, drivers of emerging workplace also include organizational factors, some of which we are familiar with, okay, remote and hybrid work or fully on-site work. Okay, again, increasingly, some organizations are trying to ensure they have flat organizational structures, especially some of these startups. They don't have all these 14-step grades anymore. Some organizations just have like 4 levels, that's all. And there may not necessarily be a defined number of years or tenure you must spend on a particular level. They may tie it to result accomplishment. An HR colleague, a friend of mine, was telling me, I think just 2 or 3 weeks ago, how someone who joined the organization, entry level, 4 months later, said they wanted to see him. My friend is the head of HR for the organization. So, of course, as head of HR, you try and grant audience to all employees, no matter who they are. So they scheduled an appointment for the next day, and when they came, the guy just went straight to the point. He said, sir, when will I be due for a promotion? My friend was startled. He said, my brother, when did you join? He said, 4 months ago. We should be talking about looking at your confirmation in 2 months' time, because according to the employment contract, confirmation is 6 months. He said, we've not even done your confirmation. You are already talking about promotion. Then the guy said, hope the confirmation comes with a promotion. Some of us now, so to speak, we're on the fast track, fast lane. And the guy started reeling out, so to speak, his achievements, his contribution to the team. And he started mentioning people on the next level that he was even putting through, that was getting results more in certain areas. Sometimes it may be neither here nor there. But the guy said, my colleague should look into his promotion alongside with his confirmation. Otherwise, he will open his eyes, and that he's already getting 2 or 3 offers that he has been resisting. He cannot confirm that if they don't confirm him and promote him or move him to the next level, he cannot guarantee my colleague that he will continue to ignore the offers that is coming his way in 4 months, not 4 years, in 4 months. Okay, so these are part of the changing things. Now, pay attention to your screen. I found this chart, and even though it might look like a lot of things, but it's also instructive. So it says that the road ahead in the future of work for 2030. More focus on people, process, and culture on one side. On the opposite side, just if you can see my cursor moving, we also have more focus on what? Emerging work technologies. So, if you're not careful, we HR generally will focus only on this stuff, focus on what? People, which is very valid. Focus on what? Processes, very important. And focus on culture, very, very crucial and critical. But we should also increasingly focus on emerging work technologies. So you can see some of these technologies here, AI work concierge, humanoid worker robots, quantum supercharged organizations, hyper-realistic personal avatars, digital twins, resilience, everyone as citizen developer, So which means to some extent, there are certain skill set now. Yes, you may not learn software development like a core developer, but you may want to learn in a little so that you'll be able to apply it to your work and increase your relevance. Ladies and gentlemen, still on focus on people, process, and culture. We are responsible for what? Happiness management. Okay, we are looking at, where possible, radical flexibility, trust economy. We are trying to see how we can impact digital counseling. People who are working virtually, we still want them to feel as connected as employees who work on-site and see face-to-face very regularly and consistently. But in between this more focus on people, process, and culture, and more focus on emerging work technologies, you have, to my right, radical breakthroughs coming in through some of these tech innovations. But we still now have the fact that we now need to rethink our old process. So when we are rethinking our old ways, we are adopting increasingly digital management models, immersive e-learnings, designer careers, seamless hybrid work, wellness tracking, anywhere worker, voice assistants at work, productivity coach, simplicity maximization, and so on and so forth. So this chart or figure, so to speak, if I was just going to use one slide for today's conversation, I would just stay here, because almost everything, directly or indirectly, is captured in this slide. The future or the now of work, ladies and gentlemen. So what are some of these emerging work trends? More explicitly, remote and hybrid work models, digital transformation, workforce demographic shifts, focus on employee well-being, automation and AI integration, the gig economy, which means where you can work from anywhere or work multiple jobs, freelancing, and so on and so forth, continuous learning and upskilling, data-driven decision-making, then sustainability and corporate responsibility, again, data privacy and cyber security, very important, and collaborative technologies. So I know, for example, if you are working in manufacturing, you may say, no, we don't do remote and hybrid work. So it doesn't necessarily mean today where you work, all the 9 or 10 factors or 11 factors will apply instantaneously to you. Even those that don't apply to your organization right now, as an HR professional, should be abreast of it, because you may change jobs tomorrow, or your organization may expand, you may have a new subsidiary or a new business line tomorrow that may be working in some of these places, or you may be working with vendors or third parties that are operating in this place. Okay, so we've said this, what's changing, accelerated globalization, talent and skills imbalance, technology advancement, and big data. Okay, look at this cartoon showing, or is it cartoon now? Well, cartoon, yeah. So this man wearing yellow, engaging with this man in green, is saying, yeah, we are looking for someone who can stretch with the demands of this job. Are you flexible? So we need to be what? Flexible. Flexible in this context means we need to be agile. Workforce generally is becoming younger, more connected, more global, more mobile. This mobility may also show why people, so to speak, don't tend to stay too long in a place anymore. So we may need new models of career. Okay? We may need new models of career management to be able to contain, to be able to optimize, to be able to satisfy the emerging workforce. We may also need new models of work to manage the emerging workplace. the emerging workplace that many organizations are already in or experiencing at different levels. More specialization, more diversity, sometimes more performance-driven, sometimes more team-oriented, and sometimes more individually oriented. So we need new models for career management for individual employees. We also need new models for work, for the workplace. So we are talking about the workforce, and we're also talking about what? The workplace. Ladies and gentlemen, so I saw this by this notable firm, Academy to Innovate HR. These were their HR trends for 2025. And you can see the first one here, from AI adoption to what? AI adoption. Sometimes, or for someone here, if you are still struggling to AI adoption, the world is moving to adoption or from adoption. You need to change. You need to embrace it. They're also saying here is AI in HR overhyped or underestimated. Okay. They are also looking at tipping points for the skills mismatch. Then blue collar and new collar jobs book. Blue collar, you know what blue collar means? Maybe, for example, technical roles, technicians. And then new collar, so this one is not even white collar now. All this freelance, all this gig economy, and so on and so forth. People who are working that you don't even get to see, so you don't even see the color of their clothes. They're looking at the golden age of the silver worker. They're also looking at women's equity effect, so more gender-friendly, sensitive HR and management. Again, look at point 7, looming organizational anxiety. That can be, so to speak, management confusion because of the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity in the financial markets, in the general economy, okay, in the supply chain, across the different verticals of the value chain. And they are saying HR execution is king. Execution here means taking action, the right action. They're also looking at the embedded HR professional. Now, when you are embedded, part of it is that you know a lot about your business. You know a lot about the environment in which your business is working. And you also have a good grasp of all the HR tools, techniques, approach, methodologies, frameworks, and you can deploy them as appropriate. And you can also change when something is not working, add something, tweak something, stop something, and these are some of the things that will lead us to, so to speak, employee engagement at a different level. Some of the activities and initiatives that used to keep employees engaged 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, if you do the same thing now, some of your employees will not even notice. Or many of our employees will take it completely for granted. They see it as a norm. What used to wow, excite employees before? Let me quote one of my executive students today that said, sir, the things that people used to be excited about, people now have entitlement mentality about them. They now see it as a right. So, and that's the reality. But what problems are we generally trying to solve? Ladies and gentlemen, we are trying to generally project HR to the business management and to our internal customers in the business that we are relevant, that we have a role to play, and that our role is important, and our contribution is meaningful. We want to continue to hire top talent for the different departments and units in the organization. We still want to drive, improve, enhance employee engagement. We are trying to improve our employer brand. We are also trying to ensure that we align incentives for employees, identify skill gaps and bridge them, both in the short term, medium term, and long term. Can bridge them by training, upskilling, sometimes hiring, coaching new talents. We also want to develop our leadership, agile managers, people who are not only strong and skilled in the ways of the past, but open and amenable to emerging threats and emerging opportunities so that they can take advantage of it for the organization. We are trying to ensure that we align HR people strategy to organizational strategy. We are also trying to, in some cases, if we have some members of the organization, some teams in the organization, if they are not performing optimally, you want to revitalize low-performing teams. You want to enable senior management or leadership. You understand? Your C-suite, your executive, you want to equip them so that they too are not relying on expired experience. Let me say that one more time. You don't want your leadership to be relying on expired experience. Okay? You want to ensure you don't have ineffective onboarding. No, it's one thing to hire right. It's another thing to onboard effectively so that you minimize or eliminate culture shock, and then you put the round peg in the right hole in the context so they can literally hit the ground running, identifying any potential barriers and trying to eliminate it. We want to also make sure, as community of HR, as HR practitioners in our respective organizations, that we establish effective community of practice so that when people learn about things, for example, they can implement what they learn at the workplace, that can exchange ideas, and they can retain the knowledge. You also want your employees, generally speaking, to have a lean, agile mindset. You want to eliminate waste. You want to optimize resources. Resources are scarce. They will continue to be scarce. So you have to get more value for every naira, more value for every what? Every dollar. And of course, continuous improvement. How can we do more with less? How do we also ensure our employees, we create meaningful value-based career paths for them? Sometimes you talk about dual career. Some people want a technical career. Some will start from technical career, but they want to evolve into a management career. And some of all these initiatives, beautiful initiatives, cultural transformation programs and projects, change management, we want to make it stick. You want the new culture to stick. You want the new levels of productivity to stick. Ladies and gentlemen, these are some of the problems we are trying to solve. So, what are some of the forces reshaping talent strategies? Technology is key. Automation is key. So, what are the routine tasks we can automate? How do we upskill the skill set of our junior staff, of our middle management staff, both in digital and in critical thinking? Okay. Again, listen to me, people. Talk to me, people. Increasingly, workforce fluidity. You know what it means to be fluid. Okay. So you cannot just say we only have two type of employment here, full-time or contract. You must widen it. You can have full-time, contract, freelance, okay, and so on and so forth. Sometimes if a role becomes vacant, it's not by default because the person occupying that space before was full-time. You may be sure that that person exited the role. If you offer him as freelance, he may be able to continue to do the job. Of course, the terms and conditions will change. The rates may change also. And you may be able to hire. It's not all talents that want to sign a contract that will make them commit to you full-time. They may be willing to work for you, but they want to work for 3 organizations. Do you today, based on your HR framework and your employee policy, can you accommodate gig freelancers in your own organization and integrate them as to part of your resident? Because if you do that, you will see that the time to fill certain gaps, talent gaps, may become faster. Check. You need to relook. Is every job in your organization, does it need full-time manning from 8 o'clock to 5 p.m.? If somebody commits 3 hours a day, won't you still be able to work efficiently? And then you save some cost. Of course, there are other considerations like data privacy. When you sign non-disclosure agreement, for example, okay, some people, it's not everybody in quotes that cares about pension. Some people are open to short-term contracts so that they can do other things. We've spoken about the generational shift and the economic volatility, which sometimes also leads to migration, brain drain. I noticed that in recent times, forgive me, but I noticed that in recent times, we are not really talking about Jackpot again. Is it because people are not jackpotting? People are still going every day, even though you can see in mainstream media, countries like United States of America, you can see how they are clamping down on migration, trying to make it more difficult and tougher, but people are still going. You will also see even in quote our own Kemi, you know, the British government, UK, how they are also, so to speak, almost every other day revising the different migrant routes to United Kingdom. But brain drain still exists. You may be surprised that Nigerians travel to places like Gambia, Kenya, name it, anywhere in the world. So, key forces, recap, digitalization and artificial intelligence, workforce fluidity, generational shift, and what? Economic volatility. So we must focus on retention as much as possible. And part of the strategies, initiatives for retention, we include, please pay attention to this, building inclusive leadership cultures. You see, yes, I agree completely that paying more money has an impact. But can you be increasing salary every 6 months or every month or every quarter? Maybe, maybe not, depending on if your organization can afford it. If you are increasing revenues and you are able to manage other costs, maybe, maybe not. But if you build and enhance your leadership, inclusive leadership culture, in other words, have a non-toxic environment. And by saying a non-toxic environment, we are not saying that you don't have a performance-driven environment, because being toxic and being performance-driven are not the same thing. All right. You also want to see how you can create alternative career pathways for employees, where they can see growth and where you can engage with them from time to time. How can you, for example, offer, where possible, depending on the nature and structure of the organization, international exposure, global mobility? So these are some of the things, experience you can offer, extend to your employees as much as what possible, permissible. Okay, so let's begin to coast home now and look at some of the strategic. Thank you so much, my brother Ali. He says, make the employees take ownership of the company. Let's begin to now look at some of the strategic imperatives for HR professionals. Rethinking what? Talent acquisition. So you see that it took some time to provide an overview. And the truth is, it becomes normal that if all the things we mentioned prior to now have changed, we cannot continue to do the same thing the same way and expect a different result. It's not because the way is bad, but it's because the context in which we are doing those things in the past has changed. So because the context has changed, the approach now needs to be tweaked in line with the current reality. So maybe not all these points will work, some will work for you depending on the stage of your organization and HR practice in your organization. We are saying, how do we begin to shift more from a credential-focused company to skill-based hiring? Credential focus is you are looking at, do you have a master's? Do you have a degree? Do you have a, rather than, can you do this thing? Competency-based. Hopefully, if you got the right credentials, it should translate to competence, but not necessarily in every instance. So focus, move from credentials to what? Skill-based. Build employer branding that highlights purpose, innovation, career growth. Leverage data-driven recruitment tools and AI to even reach passive talent pools, because not everybody that is competent and good is actually looking for a job. And you cannot rely only on people who apply to you to be your source of talent pool. There are people who are not applying, but if you are able to attract, get their attention, bring over, may be able to make significant impact on your organization. Again, we've talked about ambiguity and we've spoken about how you need to approach ambiguity with agility. Hence the need to what? Build the agile workforce. Where possible, note, not necessarily all instances. Because, for example, take manufacturing or hospital. Okay. Where possible, hybrid work models that balance flexibility with productivity. Of course, you make sure you put the corresponding performance framework in place, because we are not saying that give people remote work and then performance and productivity will drop. No, it is not at the expense of the organization's interests. So terms and conditions must what apply. Thank you so much, Temitope. You say here, and I agree, that unfortunately, many credentials are not defendable. Exactly. Many are not. Some people can, so to speak, read and cram, but they cannot translate it to problem solving in the organization for the client, for the customers. In addition to adopting hybrid work models, we want to foster multi-skilled teams. When we say multi-skilled teams, there is this sometimes, people want to specialize. Okay. So if there are no regulatory constraints, sometimes you want somebody that can do 2, 3 things instead of one person that can do only one thing. The reason is not far-fetched. Mobility is high. Attrition may be higher than in the past. People stay less time in organization than in the past. So since you don't know who is going to relocate next, you don't know who is going to transition to another organization next, you embrace cross-functional training so that everybody can learn everything, in quotes. A is learning what B is doing. B is learning what A is doing. That way, both A and B will get better fulfillment, if I can use that word, because their capabilities, their competencies is being widened and being deepened. Where possible, we want to utilize contract or gig workers strategically for specialized projects. And I've seen this in organization. Maybe you are talking to a partner or to a new client, and you are talking about a 6-month project, yet you go and hire somebody full-time. I don't get it. I see some entrepreneurs are extremely optimistic, but you now go and uproot somebody from a full-time employment somewhere that is sure, maybe add 50% to their salary here, then 6 or 8 months later, you will now say the project is over or the project was not extended. And then, in Street Palace, you now say you put them on, oh God. No, now. So where possible, you can utilize contract gig workers. Okay. As HR professionals, we want to ensure on behalf and with our organization, we strengthen the employee value proposition. So all the non-financial incentives, we add it to competitive salary. We HR people, now, even when we see in a job vacancy, we see competitive salary, we almost immediately smile. That what is competitive about the salary? If it's sure for you, put the amount so that people that will be competitive too, we indicate their interest. We want to enhance and improve how we recognize and reward employees meaningfully so that we can deepen engagements. Upskilling and reskilling, invest heavily in training. Recently, or a few weeks or months ago, I was talking to one of my friends who is in the union. I said, if I was in the union, yeah, I won't stop agitating for better welfare and salary. But what I will add to my front burner and my request now will be training, upskilling. In fact, I'll place it slightly higher over salary increments. Why? So that our employees can continue to be relevant and be able to work here or there, as the case may be. So these are some of the initiatives. Build inclusive leadership culture, create career pathways, offer international exposure. We want to also see how we can leverage technology for HR excellence. By now, this should no longer be a cliche to you in your organization. HR analytics. 1, have you even identified all your data source? 2, are you harnessing all these data source and then analyzing it and drawing insights from it? Track turnover trends, engagement, productivity, and unlock data-driven insights. Today, there are AI tools that can help with some of these things. All you just need is provide the data. Anonymize it for confidentiality where required. Embrace, consider digital onboarding. Use collaborative tools and digital systems to improve what? Employee experience. AI performance management. Integrate AI systems of FIARA and database what appraiser. To a large extent, AI is not sentimental, it's not emotional. It doesn't do I like you, I don't like you, you are from my tribe, you are not from my tribe, you are from my religion, you are not from my religion. AI is technically neutral. Okay, so I also got this from Academy to Innovate. 5 steps for AI adaptation. So encourage safe AI experimentation, implement comprehensive AI training, develop a clear AI strategy. Do you have an AI strategy for your organization? Brothers and sisters, don't tell me that that's the job of the IT department. Even if it is, initiate the conversation, work with them, and collaborate. Can we have a draft AI strategy? Of course, it will vary from organization to organization, from industry to industry. If you don't have an AI strategy, it means you don't know how imminent or how compelling the impact on AI on the workforce and your firm is. If this is the only thing you take away from today's webinar, and next week, starting tomorrow, turn it to an action plan by Friday, come up with a draft AI strategy. Are we together? Also, we want to continually lead learning and innovation and continue to address job displacement fears. That's why if you know anybody is doing any job today that is routine, find out, engage with them. They may have other skill sets you may not be aware of. Begin to provide job enrichment, job enlargement, begin to position them for maybe more senior roles. It's not every time there's a vacancy you go out. There are people who have been around for a while in your organization that can come up. And please, let's stop this stereotyping. I've seen this in some organizations where maybe because somebody came in as a clerk. So you have this see finish mentality. You don't see this person beyond the clerk. Are we together? You almost make it look like, yeah, maybe he has now gotten a degree, but the clerk in him has not left him. Let's give people a time, an opportunity. So even if you don't want to what's the word, regularize or upgrade immediately, you can say, okay, come and do this work like 3 months probation or like a reliever role, so that that person will have the opportunity to demonstrate whether they can do the job or not before we just take the opportunities out. Very quickly, I'll just speak a little about the multi-generational workforce. I think we've dealt with it in another webinar, so you can check the YouTube channel, Yemi Adeosun. You'll see 1 or 2 things around this thing. But functionally, we are saying we have multiple generations. And you can see on this table at a glance, Gen Z, okay, you can see their age birth rate, millennials, Gen X, and baby boomers. They have different life paradigms. Okay, but you will see some things that is still common to everybody. So let me give you an example. Baby boomers, they live to work. Gen X, they work to live. Are we together? Millennials, they live and work with purpose. Gen Z, they live to experience. So you will still see live, 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 live. It's just how they are looking and approaching the live. Okay? It's just that Gen Z, in quotes, work now disappeared in this particular analogy. Look at attitude to authority. Baby boomers, respectful of authority, prefer hierarchy. Gen X, skeptical of authority, self-reliance. Millennials, question authority, seek collaborative relationships. Gen Z, prefer flat structure, challenge authority. You can see, role of relationship, value system, role of career. So let's look at that because of time. Baby boomers, lifelong one employer, they will be with UAC for 35 years and retire there. Gen X, career as a path towards security. Millennials see careers as a means of what? Fulfillment. And then Gen Z sees career as what? Entrepreneurship journey. So even though they are working for you, they are almost working for themselves while working for you. Okay, we can see technology, we can relate. See Gen Z, digital native, high-tech dependency. Look at the market, focus on value fast decision making. Okay, look at view of future, uncertain, open to innovation. That's why, because they see the future as uncertain, they can leave a certainty for uncertainty. They are very comfortable with it. these are some of the dimensioning of multi-generational workforce. Okay, this slide just quickly shows, for example, how we can manage them, some of the strategies. So let's look at Gen Z. We are already familiar with the others. Effective management for Gen Z, for example, create a flexible work environment, offer instant feedback. Don't wait till month-end or appraisal window. Emphasize digital innovation as more as possible. For leadership, where possible, create flat organizational structures with room for creativity. Engagement tactics, provide fast-paced tech-enabled projects with autonomy so that you are not completely micromanaging them. Learning and development, focus on micro-learning, tech integration, and entrepreneurship. Again, increasingly, and it's not their fault, it's the era they were born. You know, it's not everybody that can sit in a 1 hour webinar like some of us. So you see that some of them, they'll just be fast forwarding, look for only 1 or 2, 5 minutes that they're interested in. And that's all. And they will tell you, I say, oh, let me I watch your webinar. And they watch only 5 minutes. Or they will forward it to one aspect that they need, and they are fine. All right. So it's very important that we recognize and leverage the strength of all the 5 generations. We promote reverse mentoring programs to facilitate knowledge sharing. There's an adage in Southwest Nigeria that says, the old is wise, the young is wise. That was how we created the city called Ile-Ife. In other words, you need insights from the old and insights from the young. And that's why we say reverse mentoring and then mentoring. So we are teaching and learning from each other. Okay, this is very, very important. Now, a few things. For example, Sean says that the different generations value different work aspects, but they value work. They just value different work aspects. So we should understand and foster what collaboration. Jennifer says that we should avoid stereotyping. In other words, oh, they are Gen Z. We're almost using that word Gen Z like an abuse. It's only when a Gen Z is talking to a Gen Z and calling them a Gen Z that, so it's almost like, you know, in maybe US, you know, if a black man calls another black man, say, ah, my nigger, it will look like a greeting. But if a white man calls a black man nigger, then that looks like racism. You can see that. Let's focus on what individual strengths. Mark Friedman says that we need to combine the experience and the innovation of both the old and the young, and foster mentoring across what generation. So we'll look at a few things very, very quickly, you know, as we attempt to wrap up this conversation this evening. In the next few slides, stay with me. So we are looking at AI integration in the workplace, autonomous AI systems, and so on. So some of the implications for talent management, upskilling and reskilling employees in AI tools to avoid obsolescence. Let's start from us ourselves, HR. Step up your AI awareness, usage, leverage, create policy for AI integration while as much as possible within reasonable boundaries, ensuring job securities. Then rise of data analytics and investments. Okay, so train employees on data interpretation and analytics, also learn it, incorporate data-driven decision-making, for example, even in recruitment and workforce planning. Okay, shift to proximity-centric workplaces. All right, so again, what I'm trying to do is show implications for talent management on some of the data I provided early in today's webinar. Redesign workplaces to align with employee preferences where possible. Leverage hybrid models to balance of proximity and remote options. Very important. Decline in diversity, equity, and inclusion prioritization. Reinforce DI policies to attract diverse talent. Okay. Establish client frameworks for inclusive leadership, okay, and bias-free recruitment practices. Evolving employee value alignment, that's the trend. You want to align leadership behavior with organizational values. You want to engage employees with regular culture and value alignment program. Demand for authentic leadership. You know, when we talk about employees increasingly noticing how many leaders don't even live the value of the organization that is paying their salary. So we want to even train leaders on authenticity and emotional intelligence. We want to develop transparent communication strategies so we can build trust. With the global increasing emergence of apprenticeship for graduates. We also want to create apprenticeship pathways for graduates to address skills mismatch. Sometimes we almost look at the word apprenticeship like it's for unskilled people or for semi-skilled people or for illiterate. It is not. Okay. So even internship is like an apprenticeship kind of method. Okay. So let's leverage internship to develop talent pipelines for critical roles, especially technical roles. With respect to the need for more agility and resilience, let's foster agility by developing flexible learning programs, empower teams with cross-functional skills and resilient training. With respect to redefining employee and engagement through technology, incorporate technology into our employee engagement programs. Use virtual reality, for example, for training and development to stimulate or simulate real work challenges. So let's quickly look at how HR process life cycle connects with the emerging HR realities. We're HR professionals. So we want to look at a few major HR domain knowledge and what we need to do. So this is recruitment and talent acquisition. So what are the emerging HR realities? So I'm trying to map for us. So it's like we are recapping now. We are winding now. Of course, recruitment and talent acquisition, need for younger tech-savvy talent, increasing demand for diversity and inclusion, use of AI in training. Connection, recruitment must adopt data-driven AI, power tools for faster, unbiased hiring, and focus on target outreach to attract diverse next-generation talent. Onboarding and orientation, you're looking at hybrid and remote work experience. You're looking at employee experience as a priority. So onboard processes should integrate virtual tools and focus on creating seamless, engaging, and inclusive experience for both in-person and remote employees. So think carefully about developing your virtual onboarding for those of us who have employees who are working remote or hybrid or who plan to transition into that. Performance management, look at the connection here. Performance management must adapt to real time. Look at that. So you're not waiting for end of the month, end of the quarter, or biannual. Real time feedback mechanism, and prioritize alignment with rapidly changing organizational goals. L&D, same thing, need to focus on developing future-ready skills, leverage technology for personalized, accessible training modules. I remember my last core industry work, we are using, what do you call it now? An LMS, learning management system, LMS. And that learning management system, for example, based on the trainings you sign up for or you indicate interest, and based on the scores you get when you take quizzes after each course you do. So if you are weak in something or strong in something, it can now begin to recommend courses to match where you are strong because it knows you have interest in it, and to augment where you are weak because it says that your courses are the minimum in that. And then it will also check what you are browsing, and then it will now be suggesting. So that's using AI, for example, to suggest training modules that can reinforce knowledge, strengthen weaknesses, as the case may be. With respect to compensation and benefits, ladies and gentlemen, organizations must offer benefits aligned with employee well-being, including mental health support. And that's why in the last few years, especially from COVID year, EAP, that's Employee Assistance Program, as an example, has been introduced. I'm aware, for example, Lagos State government now have some staff that are like counselors, professional counselors, and you can book appointments, you can go and see them at the staff training center or in Alausa, as the case may be, just so that you see the kind of services that can be brought into, for example, your HMO. You can enlarge and widen it. Employee engagement, of course, we are big on that. Succession planning. So let's look at this. Preparing for leadership in a volatile, uncertain, VUCA world is critical. So succession planning should emphasize adaptive leadership capabilities and build a resilient leadership pipeline for future challenges. I was telling some people just today that before, when you are doing succession planning, in your succession pipeline, you may have 2 people. I say now you should have 5 people. Because if you are not careful and you have 2 people in your succession pipeline, the 2 people may even relocate or resign before the person that they should replace or succeed. That's the peculiarity of the age and day we are. All right. But that doesn't mean we'll stop succession planning. Offboarding and exit management. That's, resignation, retirement, and the case may be. Offboarding process should also include what? Ensure a positive experience that fosters goodwill, feedback collection, and protect employer brand. Sadly, I'm seeing increasingly, and maybe it's because of advent of social media, increasing acrimony at employee departure. It's almost as if some organizations don't want employees to leave. And when you can simply have a friendly, warm handshake, hand over, and exit graciously, people will be dragging them, won't pay your final entitlement. You will see some employees will say things like, "Oh, I won't return the laptop or the phone." Please, as much as possible, if you don't want somebody again, be as peaceable as possible. After all, what you really want is you don't want that person again. You don't need to disengage that person with acrimony. Okay? Where you can, if it's not something like theft or something, where you can provide soft landing as much as possible. The person is underperforming, and if they are asking to resign, let them go. All right? If they are the one asking. So let's make our offboarding process a positive experience, so that if they need to come back or they need to refer people to us to work with us, or they will now become our clients. I've seen it 2, 3 many times where an employee now becomes a decision maker in another organization and is now able to influence buying decision. Will they buy from you if they premise their buying decision absolutely on their experience with you while as an employee or while they were going? All right. So it's very, very, very important. Again, intentionally, I just wanted to put, for example, some HR reactions in government agencies, because I'm conscious of the fact that we have people who work in the private sector and in the government, even though what we teach cuts across. So this slide, for example, is not specific. Okay, so I just checked what's happening all over the world in ministries, government agencies. You can see now in many countries that the government public sector is investing more in HR technology. Okay, they are also trying to upskill and reskill employees for digital competencies through targeted learning. They are trying to ensure they adopt cloud-based HR platform for seamless operation in hybrid work setting. So some state governments are at that level. If you go to places like Singapore, Canada, Kenya, you will see increasing automation and digitization. Even places like Rwanda, you will see it. Then you will see in some countries, they are implementing increasingly policies to increase representation of minorities, women, and underrepresented. In fact, I give it even more to government, because in some countries, they are stronger with these affirmative actions, trying to promote TEI for obvious reasons. The benefits are many. Okay, and if we do it well, especially from the input perspective. So don't, for example, if you are in the electricity sector and you want 50% of the electrical engineers to be women, it is not when you are hiring women you will start. You will start from ensuring, do everything, STEM. How do we get more girls in the secondary school to study electrical engineering, civil engineering in the university, so that when they are graduating, they will be 50-50, even from an application perspective. Not that 10 people will apply, 8 will be men, 2 will be women. You see that the odds against the women have been skewed from the foundation. Okay? So all these things we talk about, flexible work, mental health. I mentioned earlier, for example, Lagos State has some counselors, trained professional counselors, and are available and accessible to civil servants who want to engage this course, of course, privately, confidentially, and also professionally. So these things are available everywhere, and we can use it and benefit. So what do you do as we wrap up? Audit your current talent realities against future workforce needs and against global realities. Try and build a resilient talent pipeline by nurturing partnerships, University or tertiary institution can be polytechnic, where future young talents can emerge from. Reimagine performance metrics beyond time at desk to focusing on what? Outcomes. Also ensure you integrate DEI initiatives to reflect our diverse workforce. Sometimes, how do I know if your workforce is diverse? I ask a question, does your workforce reflect your customer base? So is your customer base only one religion, only one gender? You understand? Network with HR peers regionally, globally for best practice and benchmark innovations. So these are some of the key takeaways which we have looked at. Emerging workplace requires a fundamental shift in what? Talent management. Talent management strategies must prioritize skills development. Technology can enhance talent management of practices. It's not just elimination. Don't be fixed there only on the elimination. As is eliminating some rules, some new rules are also being created. So let's balance it. Employee experience and well-being are critical components of talent management. And organizations must remain what? Agile. And it's the job of HR to help the organizations to be agile with providing appropriate manpower, reskilling, upskilling, and even working on from a closed mindset or fixed mindset to an open mindset so that the organization is better positioned for the current workplace realities and the current business realities, social realities, and talent management. Ladies and gentlemen, we still have some time, little time, to take our comments, to take our questions, to take our contributions. So if you raise your hands, I'm happy to grant you access to please speak, to either ask your question, share your thoughts, as the case may be. Thank you so much for listening. So I see Temitope. Please, you have the floor. You can unmute and share your thoughts, please. Thank you, Temitope. If you'd like to speak, anyone raise your hand so I will take all the thoughts back to back.
All right, good evening, sir, and thank you very much for this section. It was really amazing. Now, on the final slide is something I want to ask question about. Nigeria, we believe you show up for your 9 to 5, and even if you are done with work before 5 o'clock, you cannot leave your place of work before 5. Or if you are done with your work before 4 o'clock, depending on the closing time, you cannot leave before that time. And now the question is this: how do we address that culture? Because I believe whatever it is I get into the office to do between 9 to whenever it is I am done with it, I am of the opinion or the mindset that people can leave so that they can go do whatever it is different. So that they can go and do whatever it is they want to do with the time that is left in the day. But most especially in the civil service, some of them cannot leave. Even especially private organizations, sorry. If it is not 5, you cannot clock out. I believe productivity should be the key thing, not the time spent on job, like you have said. Now, how do we address these issues? Because we get to find out that people might be done about 2-3 hours before the actual closing time, but they have to remain on their desks because the organization policy has said 5 o'clock is the closing time. So what do they do with that 3 hours? That is one. And you get to see that some of them get home way late into the night, extremely tired and exhausted, and the circle continue on and on till they get to either exit or resign or they get to retire. I don't know if you understand my question, sir.
I do.
Okay.
So from a legal framework, for a full-time employee who has signed a full-time contract of 40 hours, 8 hours a day, technically you are obligated to be at your desk or at your workstation 8 to 5. I mean, technically. There's this slogan or adage that says that work in reality doesn't finish. Even if you finish the work for today, there can be work tomorrow that you can begin to do now, depending on what you do and where you do it, especially if you are creative and innovative. So if you have done what you are supposed to do today, on a good day, if you have good rapport with your line manager and team members, you may be able to leave. But most organizations will not encourage you leaving early before closing hours every day. But assuming that they've embraced flexi work, okay, because I am speaking out of what I know. I know many employees, and I'm sure you also know many employees, they be talking that even when they go home, they may do some other things, but maybe 8 or 9, they may carry their laptop again and begin to work again, maybe for 1 or 2 hours. Maybe they have an idea, a brainwave, or they are revitalized after doing some other things and they can come back to the work. So work is not actually literally 8 to 5 every time, everywhere. Yes, some work. I know that once you have left your office, you may not be able to do the work. Maybe because you cannot have access to the server, or it is a practical hands-on job, maybe like factory. Once you are not in the factory, but if you are a knowledge worker, knowledge means you can work from your laptop, from your phone. Every day you should not have to stay 8 to 5. But some of the more matured people, older generation, think we have paid for your time, 8 to 5. So if you leave at 2, do you want to go and be doing something else for another person who has not paid for that time? Or you will collect our money and go and collect money elsewhere? But I can say that depending on the role, the organization, there are some professionals today whose main job is tied to deliverables, not 8 to 5. But there are certain clear-cut, identifiable metrics and measures that if you are supposed to come up with this report, you are supposed to come up with this product, you are supposed to make this delivery, and you do it. And I'm sure people on this call, some of us can testify, your sales team, will you really say they should be coming to the office every day? In fact, I used to have an MD, if he sees a sales team member in the office, he's going to, forgive my French, he will para for you. That are you an armchair marketing person? That you should be staying in the face of the client, except the client is in our office. You get. So if that MD would rather prefer you at home, if you are not with the client than being in the office, what are you doing here? So, but the culture is slowly evolving, slowly. And some professionals have seen the light, and they are not even getting more results because they are no longer fixated on presentism, but focusing on outcomes. But if people have not changed yet, don't begrudge them. Maybe with time, okay? I typically tell people that sometimes our job we may not be able to always change every management. You will try. If they don't change, and you try, and you try, and you try, and they refuse to change, and maybe you believe that's the way to go, then you may find an organization that is already with that kind of mindset already, so that you are not you won't get bitter yourself, or the management will not be seeing you as recalcitrant, or you are working you are working across purposes with the organization. But with time, some of them will see the light. With time, some that don't see, they will retire. Or competition will pack away all their outstanding hands, and they'll begin to make some adjustments. We'll take the final contribution from my brother. Sir Ali, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, Dr. Adeosu. And it's just as if we are sitting together where you are saying this, because you said exactly what was already in my mind. However, we still have this culture of this habit of I have done my job for the day. If your product your output depends on another person's input, if you have actually done with your job, I believe you can also assist your colleague to also check what he or she has done to see that you guys collaboratively could finish work and everything will come out perfect. So actually, many organizations now embrace that productivity instead of spending the whole days in the office and all of that. And of course, COVID-19 has actually taught us a lot of things that especially this working from home, working from anywhere, and all of that. So the main thing I actually wanted to add to what Doctor has said is just that aspect of, oh, I have done my job, I cannot leave, and all of that. If we believe that you have done your job, this person has done his job, what about the person that has not been able to do his job? Whose performance or his output will depend on another person's output? Or if another person whose input depend or its output depend on your own output has not done input has not done his work, what do you do? So the idea of I've done my job, I cannot leave and all of that, some of us should just find a way to see how we can bury it depending on the organization we are working for. So thank you very much, Doctor, for this opportunity for us to always learn, relearn, and offlearn. Thank you very much.
You are welcome. Thank you so much for your helpful comments, commentaries, and contributions. I'll take this final comment. I'll read it by my sister, Bolanle James. She says here, I think, and I agree with you, madam, that the work policy, in other words, the labor law in Nigeria should be updated, incorporating some of the things we have discussed today. In other words, our labor law should more or less be aligned with current global practices so that some expatriates who today exploit Nigerian employees based on the current provisions of the labor law, but will not be able to do that in their home countries because some of them, their own laws are more in line with current realities and then are now treating us, in ways that we know is not proper, but because the law is not express or is silent because some of the things that we witnessed today did not occur or was not available as at the time that law was promulgated. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. All right. It has been a very beautiful conversation. We will continue to learn, relearn, and unlearn. Okay, I'll come your way. I'll facilitate a session at my nearest convenience, especially availability. So sometimes what I do is, if there is a day we don't have a session and it's a natural session day, I will come up because I have a series of pending sessions, but sometimes I don't teach if there are other people to teach. So to give more people opportunity so that we can hear fresh voices and fresh insight. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of our evening and all the best to our Super Falcons. Mission X, may God grant us victory. Good night.
Thank you, Dr. Adeosun. God bless you, sir.